Hi, guys. Welcome to the American Revolution. Just like last time, I'm going to put up some slides, let you ask some questions, stop me if you need to. All right, give me an emoji. How you feeling right now? Yay, everyone's good. Okay, awesome. Cool. All right, let's get started. Excuse me. So make sure that you check out Fiveable or at Think Fiveable on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And of course, make sure you subscribe, tell all your friends. 19 AP subjects that we can help you with. Coming up tomorrow, we have key documents and foundations of the American Revolution. Make sure you check fiveable.me for other upcoming streams. Like I said, we've got really every AP subject I think you could possibly want. Where's Ton? I don't know, Tyler. Maybe he'll drop in. Okay, in this stream, we're going to talk about the American Revolution. We're going to talk about how we got there. We're going to talk about what is happening when we get there. And we're going to talk about the impact and what happens next. So, can you guys see that okay? Should we take notes? I always suggest taking notes, Giovanna. So we have the French and Indian War that is going to end with the Treaty of Paris in 1763. And we have Pontiac's War that is going to really be what prompts Britain to issue the Proclamation of 1763. So first, what is the Proclamation of 1763? I can try. Nope, then I can't see you guys. Eek. Okay, right. So the Proclamation of 1763 is going to tell the colonists they can't go past the Appalachian Mountains because it's going to create conflict, right, Amy, between the natives and the colonists, and they've just finished this war. So they decide, we've had enough, we've spent enough money, had enough war, you can't go across the Appalachian Mountains. Good? Okay. So what is salutary neglect? Exactly. They didn't really pay any attention to the colonies anymore. They kind of let them do their own thing. Right. Well, because of the wars and because they were, it was 170 years after they had arrived in the New World, and they were just kind of doing their own thing. They weren't causing any trouble, and they were making a lot of money for the crown. So it was kind of just easier to let them do their own thing. Why did the era of salutary neglect end? Okay, so trade, yeah, it's going to end due to trade. What do you mean, Lewis? Okay, so with the trade, what they're doing is they're trying to increase trade between the yeah, for resources. Absolutely. Good job, Lewis. So increased trade between the colonies and England. So England is going to give the colonies are going to send raw resources, raw materials over to England, and England is going to sell them back to the colonists after they've made things out of these, the raw materials. So who can tell me what that's called? Mercantilism. Woo, good job, Amy. Okay, why did salutary neglect end? Someone had said because of the French and Indian War, but give me a little bit more on that. Yep. So they're going to start taxing a lot. They're going to really start enforcing. Remember the Navigation Acts? And they're going to start really reinforcing all that with the writs of assistance, which means that they are going to start looking at everyone who is trying to trade with anyone who's not England. So they're trying to keep that money in house. Okay, good job. Writs of assistance, I just talked about. Okay, the Admiralty Courts. In the Admiralty Courts, they gave the colonists who were captured or charged with smuggling, they sent them to the Admiralty Courts. So the Admiralty Courts are going to actually be in England. So this is obviously going to be a problem because the even under the English Bill of Rights, the colonists are allowed a trial by jury, but they're not really their peers. The people in England kind of see them as, dirty little colonists, uncultured and whatnot. So when they're caught doing things, like smuggling, they're tried in a court in England in front of, people who aren't their peers. So that's going to be a really big problem. What is virtual representation? Yep, it's going to be an hour. Who can tell me what virtual representation is? Right. So it's you're represented because you are British. Even though they don't really see themselves as British. And like I said, the peers, they aren't really their peers. They have a totally different way of life on either side of the Atlantic. Good job. Okay, so why do you think these problems are going to lead to conflict between the British and the colonists? Like, is it really that big of a deal? Who says, yeah, it's a big deal? Give me a thumbs up. Yep, absolutely. It's going to be a big deal. So somebody tell me why. Francesca, why don't you tell me why? You can do it, Francesca. Tell me why you think it's going to be a big problem. Anybody else? Okay, well, it's going to be a really big problem because they have the English Bill of Rights. And like I said, they are English subjects. So they should be afforded all of the same rights as the English Bill of Rights gives to the English in England. Okay? No representation, even though they're virtually represented. Nobody from the colonies actually goes to London to participate. Good job. To participate in Parliament and in the decision making. It would kind of be like if Canada decided to make laws for us, right? We don't send anybody over there, but their best interest is what our best interest is what they're looking out for. We've had years of self-rule here in the colonies, so they don't really understand the point of them trying to enforce all of these laws when, we're doing good without you. You don't need to come on over here and start with these taxes and all of these crazy laws like the Proclamation of 1763. If you look at the English Bill of Rights, and I don't remember, I think I put it in here, almost everything in the English Bill of Rights requires the consent of Parliament. Taxes, laws, anything that the king wants to do is going to require the consent of Parliament. So if we don't have any representation in Parliament, right, it's just not fair to the colonists. So they're going to start using the English Bill of Rights against England, which I think is really funny. Okay, well, let's see. Taxation, right. Sorry. Yep. I knew it was, quartering. That's a big one. So that's actually in the English Bill of Rights as well. What's funny about that is, of course, they come over and they start quartering troops, telling us we're virtually represented, telling us that the colonists are, represented under or covered under the English Bill of Rights. But then they keep doing these things to them that really conflict with the English Bill of Rights. They won't let the colonists have a standing military, which they tried to do, which they will later on do, but we'll get to that in a sec. Any questions so far? Nope. Okay, give me your favorite emoji if you're good to go. That's my favorite one. Cool. All right, let's keep going. So Britain is going to get a little crazy with the laws and the taxes. This is going to be the complete list of the taxes. Nah, I shouldn't say that because I don't really break down the intolerable acts, but this is going to be the big ones that really cause the colonists to, rebel. So we've got the Sugar Act, and that's not just on sugar. Anything that contains sugar, rum, molasses, tea, haha, in the South, it's with sugar, get it? And sugar cane. Tea is going to get double taxed between the Sugar Act and the Tea Act. So that's going to happen a year after the proclamation of, oh no, not again, 1763. Hold on a sec. You with me? Okay. My screen just blanked out for a second. All right, cool. Sorry. Okay. And then we have the Stamp Act. This is one of my favorite ones. What is the Stamp Act? Good job, Lauren. Really, anything on paper is going to be taxed. Okay. Newspapers, court documents, anything that has paper. It's not just, it's not, a lot of people think it's a stamp, like a postage stamp, requiring them to use the postal service, but you have to have a stamp on this paper or it's illegal. A stamp to prove you paid the tax. Playing cards, pamphlets, licenses, contracts, anything with paper. Okay, so then we have the Stamp Act Congress pops up in 1765 to oppose the Stamp Act. And the Parliament was like, okay, great, we'll take it under advisement. Also in 1765, we have the Quartering Act. And I'm sure you guys remember this from like 8th grade, 7th grade. The Quartering Act is going to allow the British to put soldiers in the homes and businesses, wherever, of the colonists. So, but why? Why are they even bothering to do that? Is it just, kind of spiteful, or is there a purpose behind them saying that the soldiers can live in their houses? You guys got this. What do you think? Why was this necessary? Why did it even come up? Okay, to prevent a rebellion, but they weren't actually, nobody was really thinking about rebellion yet. Okay, to show British power, yeah. They needed money to support the army. Well, yes, they did. And it's not really for Indian attacks. What we have going on is all of the troops definitely need somewhere to stay. But why are there so many troops now that they need somewhere to stay? Right. Not just to defend the frontier. What we have is we've got all of these, so far there's only 2, but we've got these acts coming up, right? And we've got the colonists are having these secret meetings. What do we do about, this unfairness, this abuse of power? To make sure they don't revolt, definitely, but also to enforce all of these new laws that they're putting in. So now they've got all of these. Yeah, right. They're demonstrating their power. Absolutely. They've got all of these new laws. They're going to come in and try and intimidate the colonists. They're going to try and break up these secret meetings. They're going to make sure that people are paying the taxes. They're going to make sure everyone stays in line, pretty much. Okay? Good. The Declaratory Act is, okay, I lied. The Stamp Act isn't my favorite. The Declaratory Act is. Stamp Act Congress in 1763 is going to, tell the Parliament it's unfair. And Parliament's going to go, you know what, fine, you're right. It's not fair. So a year later, they passed the Declaratory Act. And the Declaratory Act is going to say, anything that we say is going to go. We have all legislative power over the colonies. Doesn't matter what you say. We're going to repeal the Stamp Act, but anything that we say goes from now on, here on out. There's nothing you can do about it, which I think is really funny because, it was kind of unnecessary. They've got the troops being quartered. They've already got, the Sugar Act. Nobody approves of these in the first place. But, to make the colonists feel better, they're going to pass a law that says they can do whatever they want. And then we have the Townshend Acts of 1767. It is going to impose duties on all imported glass, lead, paper, and tea. So now we've got tea double taxed. Tea is obviously very popular. No one really understands that nowadays. Like, why does it matter? Tea was a big resource. It was, they had it in the colonies. They were importing it from wherever they wanted. Tea was a big deal. Okay. Any questions? You guys are quiet tonight. No questions? Oh, just the whole beginning, Mario, but gosh. No, it's good. You can get caught up pretty easy. No questions? All right. Whoops. Please hold. Okay, Boston Massacre was not really a massacre. I don't know what's happening. 4X. Okay, well, I'll keep going and you tell me what we're talking about. The Boston Massacre is not obviously a massacre. This is going to be this poster here, this it's an engraving, is going to be propaganda put out by the colonists to send to the other colonies, to make it sound like it was a lot more than what it really was. It was a terrible thing, but it wasn't a massacre like we would consider a massacre. I want to say 4 people died. I think that's the number. Yeah, so the colonists were throwing snowballs at them. They were heckling them. They were harassing them. And, what do the redcoats do? Pew, pew, they fire at them and kill 4 people. So that's in 1770. And then in 1773, we have the Tea Act, which is going to force the colonists to buy tea from the East India Tea Company, which is a British company that's about to go bankrupt. So why not help them out and force the colonists to buy the tea from them? So then we have the Boston Tea Party. I told you we were going to spill some tea. The Boston Tea Party, they, spilling the tea overboard. Tatiana, do you know how they did it? Thanks, Mario. It's just a little side note. It's not really anything they're going to test you on. They dressed up. Yeah, they dressed up like Indians, boarded the ship, took the tea, and threw it overboard. So this is going to obviously irritate the Parliament and the King, and they are going to pass the Intolerable Acts, which is going to close the port of Boston. The Port of Boston is going to obviously be the number one way that the New England colonies get their stuff out to England. If they can't sell their stuff to England, where are they going to get the money to buy the taxes? So none of this is really making a whole lot of sense if you're a colonist. If you're in England and you're not here, whatever, close the port, come up with the money however you can. We're England, we're going to just do whatever we want. None of this is really going to make a whole lot of sense. And all of these put together really are going to, spell the demise for England's American colonies. Well, their ownership of. Okay, so we have all these acts that are upsetting the colonists, and it's going to lead us to, it's none of our business, it's going to lead to the First Continental Congress. Who can tell me what the First Continental Congress is? You still with me? No, we're not sure. That's okay. I can tell you. That's why you're here. It's okay if you don't know. So the First Continental Congress is going to be a meeting between the representatives of the 13 colonies, except Rhode Island, because we all know what Rhode Island does. They don't want any real part of being anything but independent by themselves for now. So the First Continental Congress, yeah, good job, Francesca. It's going to bring everyone together, and they're going to talk about, what do we do about all of these taxes? What they're going to decide to do, first of all, is, like Francesca said, they are going to decide to boycott British imports, and that's mostly going to be led by the women. The women are going to start making clothes instead of buying clothes. They're going to stop buying glass imports or China and things like this from England. They're going to start buying it from the colonies themselves. And then they are going to write a letter. Oh, wait, sorry, back up. So they're basing their complaints, their grievances, on the ideas from the Enlightenment. Tell me one Enlightenment idea they're basing their complaints on. Natural rights. Yep. So who came up with that? John Locke. Awesome. Yeah. So natural rights are when we, everyone is endowed by their creator with natural rights. And England is obviously, violating those. Is there another Enlightenment idea you can think of? Okay, independence. That kind of goes back with John Locke, right? How about representation? Popular sovereignty. Yep. Okay, good, 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 good. We can talk about Enlightenment ideas. I'll see if maybe I can put a stream up about the Enlightenment when we do the period 3 review. Okay. British laws, like I said, the English Bill of Rights, they're going to have a problem being British and not being, the laws being applied fairly. They have this tradition of self-rule that we had talked about. So the actions of the First Continental Congress, like we said, it is they're going to start boycotting things, but they're also going to create a committee of correspondence. And what that is it's just kind of a network of colonists who can keep in touch with one another, from Massachusetts down to Georgia. So they're going to all get together and have this network of people. So, if something happens in Massachusetts, like, oh, I don't know, the Boston Tea Party or the Boston Massacre, everyone is going to be made aware of all these incidents that are happening. They're also, yep, Tatiana, you're absolutely right. They're going to send a really nice letter to King George, and they're going to ask him very nicely, can you please stop being such a jerk? We really don't like what's happening. We promise we're going to be loyal. Just kind of back off a little bit. Let us do our thing. Stop being such a jerk. And what do you think that King George and Parliament said? They said no. Emily, right? No, is what they said. They said, I think you are crazy. Yeah, nice try, though. So, everything keeps going the way it was going. So then we have the battles of Lexington and Concord. Right, Taylor, nice suggestion, though. Well, let me pause for a second. Up until now, what questions do you have? Oh, I have 2 unanswered questions. Okay, Amy wants to know, how long did it take the acts to be imposed on the colonies after Parliament passed them? Um, well, a couple months at least, because remember, it's going to be back and forth from England to the colonies is going to be kind of a what, about 3 months. So it's going to take a few months. With these are going to come, more troops in order to enforce the laws, and more government officials to keep an eye on them. Okay, did they get arrested for not having paid the tax? Yes, they would get arrested. They would be fined, right? Like, they're not paying the tax, they're going to pay a fine. Okay. And they would probably be tried in court in England. Okay. Why was the East India Company going bankrupt? There was a lot of competition in the tea industry. Remember down South Carolina, the Carolinas, they're producing tea. In the Caribbean, they're producing tea. In India, they're producing tea. So, the competition is really strong for the East India Tea Company. So that's why that's what prompted England to, help bail them out, is to get the captive audience to pay for it. How are we doing? No, all right. Good, good, good. Oop, good. Thanks, Stinker. Good. Awesome. Hands me great. Yay. Okay. Lexington and Concord. So the colonists aren't stupid. They know that they've got to not only exercise some of their rights, but they've got to go and start hoarding things just in case. Yes, Tatiana, this is Lexington and Concord are going to be the battles that are going to kick off the Revolutionary War from a historical perspective. From a timeline date perspective, it's not, we haven't declared independence yet, but according to the king and parliament, this is what's going to kick everything off. So what they've done is they have an arsenal hidden in Lexington. John Hancock and Samuel Adams, the British find out, are in Lexington, and the British are going to try to arrest them and to seize all of the weapons. What happens is the Minutemen of Massachusetts, the part of the Colonial militia, which is unofficial at this point, took a few casualties, but eventually kind of drove them out of Lexington. Now, Concord is going to be a different story. It's the same event here, okay? So Concord is just up the road from Lexington. They regroup, and the British actually get into the town. They are going to search for supplies and weapons, and they're successful. They're going to head back to Boston, but on their way, they're going to be ambushed by the Minutemen of Massachusetts. The Minutemen are going to kill 250 British soldiers. 90 colonists are going to die. But according to the Parliament and the King, this is a declaration of war. How dare you defend yourselves and try to keep your stuff? Okay. Outraged. They are outraged. And then we have the Second Continental Congress. Let's see. Yep, that is the shot heard around the world. Good. Good. Let me stop. Why is that the shot heard around the world? They just had really loud weapons. Okay, first shot, yes. I think you're right. I think you're right. So it's the shot heard around the world, because this is where we're going to have a whole new country. We're going to have a whole new world power. Britain is going to be brought to its knees by this crazy little ragtag. I love that ragtag group of militiamen, right? They were defending themselves in the most powerful nation in the world. Yes. And stinker, then what happens? We win, right? Awesome. I mean, spoiler alert. Sorry, guys. But they have the second, y'all are doing great. Yeah, spoilers. Sorry. I'll make sure to, announce my spoilers from now on. The Second Continental Congress convenes, and they signed the Olive Branch Petition. Again, telling the king, we don't want trouble. They knew, they're messing with England. England is the number one superpower in the world right now. They've got the biggest navy, the biggest army, and they're inundated with visions of this every day. They've got the governors and the soldiers. They've got all this Britain in their face every day. They know who they're messing with, but they're not going to back down. They deserve rights. So they told the king, look, we're going to stay loyal. We don't want any trouble. And they agree at the Second Continental Congress that this is going to be the formal governing body of the colonies. The Continental Congress is going to be their own government, which is going to unite all the colonies into one. And that's going to be really important when you've got, each one had their own, the House of Burgesses and the Assembly is in Massachusetts. Everyone had their own, but now they've all come together and said, okay, we have one legislature. We're all going to come together to govern each other. Yep, absolutely, Tatiana. They were trying to avoid war. Absolutely. They are going to decide that they are going to raise an army, and they're going to print their own currency. This is not in line with the English Bill of Rights, but they have to do something, knowing that Britain is getting, let's face it, a little bit violent, a little in your face. So they're going to have to do something to also assert their own rights and their own power. So they're still not ready to take on Britain. And frankly, they didn't want to break from Britain. There weren't a whole lot of representatives at the Continental Congress, maybe 1, 2, who, let's break with Britain. The rest of them were like, no, that's a terrible idea. A, we're going to lose. B, they're going to be horrible to us. All of us are going to be dead in jail, or, they're just going to continue to make our lives more miserable. We need to work this out. So they tried. Yes, they just wanted to eat their pizza rolls in peace. King and George III gets the Olive Branch Petition, completely ignores it. After Lexington and Concord, he and Parliament proclaimed that this was a declaration of war, the Lexington and Concord, the fact that they're establishing their own army, the fact that they're trying to make their own currency. King George III said that the colonies proceeded to open an avowed rebellion, which is going to give everyone the right to go ahead and start war, continue war with the colonists. So this is when it's going to be a big deal. So after the king says that, the Continental Congress approves the Resolution of Independence on July 4th, 1776. Woo! Okay. 1770. You guys are familiar with this image, I'm sure, right? This is Washington crossing the Delaware. Should I pause? You guys good? Any questions? Tally is good. We good. 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 And that's my dog. Jetta's goo. Excellent. Good to hear. Shanti's good. Everyone's good. Good. So, Battle of Trenton. these are going to be your important Revolutionary War battles. There's a lot more than what I'm going to tell you, but these are the main ones that I really want you to focus on, and try to remember it when it comes exam time. Okay, for examples of colonial resistance or colonial success, that kind of stuff. All right, so Battle of Trenton, December of 1776. So we're only really 6 years or 6 months into after the Declaration of Independence. George Washington goes over the Delaware River and he surprises the Hessians, who are the German mercenaries who were hired by Britain. Oh, it was Tatiana, and it was great. So up until this time, when men fought in war, they met in the middle of a field, they shook hands. Do you surrender? No. Do you? Heck no. Okay, go back, get everybody together, fire, right? So the kind of warfare that the colonists are going to impose on Britain seems cowardly. They're going to do surprise attacks constantly, sniper attacks constantly, and the British it confuses them, because that's not really how could you possibly shoot me from a tree? You're a coward. Well, you're dead. I don't care if I'm a coward. So we win. Okay. Oops, sorry, spoiler alert. So the Hessians are the German mercenaries that are hired by the English, and George Washington and his men cross over the Delaware the day after Christmas and surprise them and attack them. And this is going to really be a morale booster for the Continental Army. And then we have the Battle of Saratoga in 1777. Excuse me. This is going to prove to France that the colonists are strong enough to win against Britain. And we are really looking for, obviously, a naval ally, really any kind of ally, right? So France is going to see that the colonists are strong enough to take on England and to keep winning these little battles. And France says, oh, okay, great. So we're going to go ahead and team up with you. And it's absolutely a turning point because of the French. Without the French, I'm not going to say we wouldn't have won, but we would not have won it at Yorktown. Absolutely. Good job, Francesca. So 1781, we have the Battle of Yorktown. Yorktown is down around Jamestown. Okay, so it's on a peninsula in Virginia, and the French Navy is going to surround it. They're going to surround the peninsula, and Cornwallis is down there with his troops, and there's no way for them to get out. Cornwallis is, the Continental Army moves in while the French are surrounding the peninsula, and General Cornwallis is going to surrender to George Washington. Yeah, it's definitely, you're right, Mario, going to lay the foundations for American-French relations. Just think about the rest of world history, right? Okay, so Cornwallis is going to surrender. Yeah, Yorktown from Hamilton. I think I've never seen it. You guys are crazy. Okay, look at that. We have another Treaty of Paris. The 1783 Treaty of Paris is going to be signed. I told you there was more than one Treaty of Paris. Push comes to shove, guess the Treaty of Paris, because it's probably going to be right. Okay, so George Washington and his army are going to win. Cornwallis is going to surrender. And yes, Jimmy Washington, who's your daddy? The United States wins. Okay, so what is the impact of the American Revolution? Obviously, there is a new world power. The United States of America is established. So we have a new world power on the stage. We have proved to the world that we're not really, a country to take lightly, that we are pretty serious about what we're going to do. It's going to give birth to American exceptionalism. Who can tell me what American exceptionalism is? I'm sure this isn't really a brain buster. Okay, Amy. So, excuse me. American exceptionalism is the idea that we're better than everyone else. Yes, we are exceptional. Yeah, the pride of being an American, that everyone else really should be here because it's better, but sorry, you're not. It's also going to lead to nationalism, which sometimes is taught as a bad thing. But it also has its good parts to it, right? This whole idea of the 4th of July being a day off and everyone going and watching fireworks and barbecues and that kind of stuff. That's your nationalism. We're actually one of not many countries who, if you drive around the streets, you're going to see, flags, the American flag being flown. You don't see that a whole lot in places like France or Spain, even for that matter. It's going to encourage the Haitians to revolt. So it's going to lead to the Haitian Revolution, and it's going to lead to the French Revolution. Are we good? How are we doing? Good, good, good. Okay. So we've got like 14 minutes left. I want some questions. I've been talking too much. No, absolutely not. Janelle, that would be, I think that would be an impossible exam to write, and probably even more impossible to answer, to pass. You need to know the big ones. You need to know the turning point ones, the ones that I showed you, because if you know those and you can give an example of why it was a turning point. So, for example, if they ask you, on an LEQ, turning points of the revolution, and you talk about, Lexington and Concord obviously is going to be the spark. And then you've got Yorktown and Trenton. So knowing those are going to be your examples of turning points in the war. Okay. Okay. What was the name of the German group again? They were called the Hessians. Here. They were called the Hessians. Where were we? Were the people who thought, that's a really good question, Amy. Were the people in Britain who thought the acts were a little, yeah, there were. There were also people in the colonies that sided with Britain. They were, there were loyalists, and they were ultimately run out of town. A lot of them went to Canada, just to kind of get out of the whole war. Now I got to defend Britain, and I don't really want to, because I'm just like this rich guy hanging out. So you had it on both sides. There were a lot of British, what's the word? Like, just the regular people in Britain, right? Who had also experienced this kind of unfairness. They are going to side with the colonists. Where did they? Okay, whoops. Where I lost you, Tati. Okay, they said the Olive Branch Petition, was it shot down like the letter? Yeah. So when they sent the Olive Branch Petition, they shot it down immediately, because their response to it was, no, you are in open rebellion. There's no olive branch anymore. You've basically decided what you're going to do, and you've decided you don't want to be British. Okay. If we were to use a battle as an example of colonial revolt, are we expected to know the exact dates, or can we just reference the battle? You do not have to know the exact dates. You don't even really have to know the sequence, but if you know, you will. If you know that, Lexington and Concord shot herds around the world, right? You know that that's the first. Saratoga, the French came. Okay, so the French weren't there in the beginning, but they came kind of towards the end because they helped us with Yorktown, right? So no, you don't have to know the exact dates. I wouldn't even, unless you are 1000% sure, I wouldn't even put a date. I would just reference the battle itself and move on. Okay, what was the Treaty of Paris? Okay, Genesia, the Treaty of Paris is what is going to end the Revolutionary War. It's going to be an agreement between the king and the colonists that say, okay, yes, you can be independent. Yes, you beat us. Fine, go on your way. Okay. Common Sense by Thomas Paine. So we have a question. Common Sense by Thomas Paine influenced the calls for independence, right? Yes. And so speaking of Thomas Paine, he had written a pamphlet at the beginning of the war that said it was called The American Crisis, and he was talking about Lexington and Concord and how the colonists are starting to really assert themselves. And in it, there's a quote that George Washington read to his troops at Valley Forge. And I don't know how much you guys know about Valley Forge, but it was kind of gross and nasty, and people were dying and disease, and it was cold in Pennsylvania, but in the winter it was awful. And the morale was getting really low. So what George Washington reads part of this American Crisis from Thomas Paine, and it's really going to pump up the troops as well as influence the call for independence. So Thomas Paine is going to be so instrumental with in the beginning, people listening to him and knowing, he's right about this, he's right about that. And then these same people are hearing him again from George Washington, boosting their morale in Valley Forge. Okay, let me move back up. Oh, Treaty of Paris. Okay, don't know who would we say were the main people of Revolutionary War on each side. Okay, so you've got Britain on one side, and then you've got the American colonists on the other side. Eventually, France joins in with the colonists, but really it's just going to be those two in the Revolutionary War. Was Benjamin Franklin an ambassador? Eventually, he is an ambassador. I really don't remember if he was an ambassador before or just after, but after for sure. He was also an ambassador to France. Okay. Did Spain have any territory in North America during this time, and did they get involved like the French did? They did have territory, and no, they did not get involved. Nobody wanted to get involved. Remember, everyone had just come out of this war. Everyone's broke. Everyone's kind of, licking their wounds, and God, England beat everybody. So who wants to tangle with Britain? Everyone kind of wants to remain neutral and see how it plays out. The French, we convinced the French to help us, and obviously it was a good thing. Okay. Do we have to know about the flag resolution? You do not need to know about the flag revolution. I know, flag resolution. I'm having a hard time speaking right now. No, you don't need to know about that. Okay. Hold on a second here. Where'd it go? Okay, what happened to that weird period? What happened to that weird period when the British and Florida post-French and Indian War? What do you mean? there wasn't really a whole. No, so I reread it when the British had Florida. So really, the Spanish are really going to maintain control of Florida until, I want to say, the War of 1812, if I'm remembering correctly. I would really have to look that up for you, Mario. Can I get back to you? Okay, thanks. All right. Okay, Tatiana wants to know the 5 Enlightenment ideas. Happiness, nature, liberty. What were the other 2? So we have life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. 5 Enlightenment ideas. Natural law. Yeah, so property is going to be included with happiness. Let me think on that for a minute, Tatiana. I've got a couple questions here. Oops, where'd it go? Nope, I'm good. Let's see, the 5 Enlightenment ideas. So we've got Montesquieu with, here, let me go back and click on this. So we've got all of it. Okay. So we've got Montesquieu is going to be talking about the separation of powers. Okay, so there's one. And then we've got natural law, which is John Locke. We've got Thomas Hobbes with legislative power, and Thomas Paine with, he's going to do like the natural law and the men governing themselves. And then Voltaire, but I honestly forget what Voltaire, what his role in it was. I'm really sorry. Wait, happiness, reason, nature, progress, and liberty. Okay. I've never really taught 5 like that in U.S. history. So yeah, the main ideas with APUSH are going to be life, liberty, happiness. Okay. Boy, let's play Stump the Teacher. Gosh. How are we doing? Intolerable acts, community with 5 laws, 5 acts. Yeah, so the intolerable acts really, like I said, you don't have to know all 5, right? The main one is going to be the closing of the Boston Harbor. That's really going to kind of push them over the edge. You don't have to know, like I was telling, I think it was Taylor, you don't have to know all of the dates. You just have to know that, this is what happened and here's, like a result of it. Good. All right. Whoops. Okay. Don't forget, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm going to get out of here. 30 seconds. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at MRD. Don't write that down. I messed that up. WWMRD, not RMD 20. And also, if you go on to fiveable.me, you'll see this little icon at the bottom. You can get live help from there. We answer questions whenever we're available, and we try to get to them as soon as we possibly can. So follow at Think Fiveable on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And that was a really good session. Do you guys have any more questions? Oh, no, not again. Brofist. I don't know what that means. Okay. All right, guys. Have a good night. Get some sleep. Good luck on your test tomorrow, Francesca. Let me know how it goes, okay? I'll be here about once a week. All right, you guys be good.